Rated M for mature.
Jack, he's a psychomaniac. That's right, it's defo sight. It don't matter who's wrong or right. I just might catch you slipping. Getting paid is my intuition and my ambition. It's the city in the sea.
All right, welcome to PGTV. This is episode 5. We're in Sound Deluxe here in LA, and we're joined by Jack himself, Mr. Steve Blum.
Just Jack.
So you want me to kill that kid?
I merely want to know why you did not kill him.
Why? Do I need a reason not to kill someone?
Yeah. So, Jack actually has a last name.
I read that.
Yeah, so Jack Cayman.
Yeah.
Although I don't think very many people actually realize that he's got a last name because of that Jack
Well,
line.
he doesn't like anybody to know it, I guess, right?
So you've been a working voice actor for a really long time.
Yeah.
Started in anime, and now you're doing a lot of video games.
Yep.
How'd you get started?
I was an executive at a film company. Actually, even before that, I was a driver at a film company. Worked my way up and was just doing anime on the side, just for fun. Mm-hmm. And one of my buddies had actually contacted me and asked me if I'd be interested in ripping some limbs off of a monster in a monster voice. And I thought, fine. I get paid $7 a line to do it. And at that time, nobody really knew how the industry worked. So I just sort of jumped in and for the free food, and everybody sort of showed up at once, which they don't do it that way anymore either. And I just did it as kind of a fun thing to do one afternoon. Ended up booking 26 episodes on the show and got another show after that, and just kind of did it for fun on the side. Never expected it to become a career. And that was about 17 years ago. And we just haven't stopped since. So.
Back then, anime was really niche, though. I mean, was there a lot of work?
Yeah. No, there wasn't a lot of work, but we seemed to have a pretty steady stream. There was something always going on. And I was working with a company called LA Hero at the time. Mm-hmm. And there was really only one other company in town at that time. It was Streamline that was really doing all the anime. And none of us really knew how to do it. We didn't even know the process of recording. And we recorded our first show in a treehouse, literally, a treehouse studio, with a guy with a chainsaw buzzing outside the window. How ironic that is at this point. But yeah, there really wasn't that much anime happening. And the fans of anime have really grown up a lot since then, too. There were very few fans that would accept a dubbed show at that time.
They were hardcore anti-dubbing. I was just about to ask you that.
Yeah.
Back in the day, I mean, they were just completely against
it. Was pretty militant. I mean, I went to my first convention up in San Jose and had my life threatened a few times, and my family's life threatened for doing it. They didn't know what to make of it.
Do you think that was a problem with, like, the education of fans? Or because you get that a lot in games. Like,
yes.
A lot of times people in games, and being involved with localization myself, if you change just a little thing, they freak out. And a lot of people are, I want the Japanese voices. Well, the funny thing is that most of the times they really don't even understand the Japanese voices. So it's kind of like, even if the Japanese voice acting was bad, they would have no idea.
Right. But just because it's the original, pure essence of the game.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the purists will always be there, I think, in every genre. And they still are, but I think that it's just become so mainstream now, games and anime and every other media, that there's enough people that are accepting of it because that's what they were weaned on. So,
when did you think that they kind of made the jump to the idea that dubs are okay? Was it when you started getting, like, the theatrical dubs, like Princess Mononoke, where they started throwing a fair amount of money at the dubs to make them high quality?
Well, yeah, I think that certainly brought it out to a bigger audience. But from my experience, when I did Cowboy Bebop, that was really one of the first shows that I had worked on that seemed to grab a mainstream audience. It was really, a lot of people didn't know what to make of anime, and it was not a palatable thing for an American sensibility until a little bit later on. And that show seemed to be such a great crossover because it had so many American elements in it, and it sort of eased people into the process of listening to a dub show, I think. And I was really lucky to be part of that. It opened a lot of doors for me in a lot of areas.
You also moved into a lot of Western animation as well.
Yeah.
Was that kind of in sync with doing the Japanese anime, or did they come about after doing Japanese anime?
It came about many years later. Yeah, the original animation was really, it's like anything else in entertainment. It just takes a long time to get established. And I never expected to do voiceover in the first place, so I didn't really expect to be able to break into that. And I had always heard that it was a very small community of people and very, very difficult to break into, and it is. But it just took a lot of years of just being around and doing stuff enough that casting directors would hear me, finally, and fans were accepting enough, so people started talking. And so that happened actually a lot later on in my career. I was probably doing anime for 10 years before I really made the jump into my first original animated show. Mm-hmm. I'd done a few games, and that helped the process too.
How'd you start getting involved with games?
It was sort of a natural transition for me. I don't remember what my first game was, but early on I started doing some stuff with LucasArts, and I think The Dig might have been my first one. Yeah, but the transition into games was just a natural thing for me, because especially the characters that I was chosen to play, for the most part, were tough guys or creatures or something that I had been doing for many years before in anime. And for me, it was actually a lot easier, because I didn't have to match what was going on the screen. I just kind of barked it out, and they gave me a list of 400 lines and in and out. So.
Do you do primarily now, is most of your work in games? Or are you still kind of a good mix of everything? Or?
It seems to be a really good mix of everything, and I like it that way. I like doing something different every day. And I think if I did just games, I would either be really bored or dead, just because they're so brutal, and I get hired for so many screaming roles and things that it's just physically too taxing to do that constantly.
How do you keep your voice in shape?
I don't have any more with me. My Chinese throat drops, I've got these little herbal throat drops, and I just pop those between lines, drink a lot of water and tea, and sleep. Basically, after working on a really hard game, I just have to lay down and get a full 8 to 10 hours of sleep to recuperate. And sometimes I can't work the next day, depending on the job. I'll have to push it a day or 2 or 3.
Do you find yourself working almost every day as a voice actor?
In the good times, yes. Yeah, and I hope, that's the way I like to keep it. I like to work every day. But when I'm doing big voiced projects like that, where I really have to get physical, then I do need some recuperation time. So just to have an instrument to use on the next job, I have to book time in between.
So one of the things that's really interesting for me, having worked with a lot of voice actors, is that you kind of step into your roles very quickly. Like, it's still a bit of a black box to me as to how much information you know about your character before you step into the room.
Right.
I know that like an actor on a film or on a TV show will kind of live with their role for a little bit before they'll get into the studio to film.
Right.
It doesn't seem that way with voice actors as much. It almost seems kind of like you step into the room and you're like, hey, this is who you are. This is your audition. This is what they liked in the voice. Go for it.
Yeah, it's all pretty much a cold read. I mean, I'd say about 90% of what I do is a cold read. And I think that's what keeps it fresh for me. That's what keeps it interesting. If I know too much, I start dissecting it, and I start putting my opinions in there rather than listen to the director and the writers and the people that have actually lived with this stuff for 2 or 3 years in some cases. So, I'd rather just kind of come in cold and listen to what they have to say and work with that. And as far as establishing the character is concerned, that's become a natural thing after doing it for so many years. I can look at a model sheet of a character or listen to a sample of something and be able to lock onto it pretty quickly.
Do you find that because you step into the character so quickly that it's harder to remember the character, or like you step out of the character just as quickly?
Yeah.
Like I can imagine, Spike on Cowboy Bebop. You did so many episodes of that character kind of lives within you because you're so familiar with him. But like on a game or something.
Well, oddly enough, though, with Spike, we didn't work every day. We'd work maybe once a week, once every 2 or 3 weeks. And it was all new to us at that time. None of us had really had time to get familiar with the series yet. So even back then with Spike, I didn't really get familiar with Spike until the last few years when I finally got around to watching the whole series. And it's even, I know less about the characters with the games, because literally I'm in and out in a day, and I won't remember anything that I did on a game. And I'm not really much of a gamer, so I don't get to keep that character in my head. I don't get to keep it alive.